Alrighty, we are back for another episode of Masculine Mastery, and really, I feel so charged up and so honored to have Darren Silver on today with me. And Darren and I had an interview about 6 months ago for a one-day men's immersion online event that I did, and really, it was one of the most memorable interviews that I've done to date. And for those of you that don't know, I had a podcast for several years and something that I was extremely passionate about, and interviewed incredible thought leaders from around the globe. But there was something that really hit home for me. And I actually became pretty emotional during our interview because it really woke up so much remembrance, so much activation within me on that interview with Darren. And so I'm like, okay, who are the first guests that I really want to have on Masculine Mastery? And Darren was one of the first people that came to mind. So with that being said, I want to just jump in with Darren and say what's up, brother. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. It's really good to be here with you. Given the circumstances of the world and waking up today, and it's really quite smoky in Colorado. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah.
Happy to hear that, man. And just really respect and honor your work and everything that you do to raise the consciousness of humanity and also the consciousness of men. And for those of the people that have never heard of you, that have never tuned into your stuff, can you just give us a little bit of a brief rundown about, who you are, what you do, and we can just kind of dive in and flow from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, a large part of what I do in one way, let's say it can happen in a variety of ways, but the song line that I'm following is really about reconnecting people to the earth. And to their visions. I have found over and over again that when people's visions emerge from an ecology of relationships and connections with nature, then their visions and actions and work feeds nature and feeds the earth. It goes beyond themselves. So they kind of are like hand in hand. And that when people get really connected to nature, vision naturally emerges. Yeah. So that's the essence of my work. That looks oftentimes like wilderness rites of passage or modern day vision quests for all types of people. But it's turned out the past couple of years, a lot of them are exclusively with men, which is a surprise to me. Nothing I ever set out to do, and have found it just deeply, deeply nourishing to be out in the wilderness with men sitting around the fire. It's deep, it's nourishing, it's riddled by grief, riddled by joy. And I'm pretty certain behind every man there's a pack of wolves and some bears and some honeybees, that are just weaving in everybody's words. So, that's a little bit of what I do.
Yeah, I can imagine the expression of and the totality of your work obviously cannot really be put into words. It's something that is a felt and visceral experience that people just have to go and do for themselves. And something that really stuck out to me when I first came across your work, and I know you've worked with other organizations and men's groups and all of that, and really brought your essence into that. And one of the things that I saw when I first went on your website was sort of maybe perhaps your tagline, but reviving the wild within.
Yeah.
And I sat with that and I was like, reviving the wild within. Wow. Like I felt the core essence of those words as they like stuck out to me on the page. And I feel that's exactly what really everybody is looking for, and specifically men, is to have that reconnection with themselves, that wildness within themselves, that primordial energy, and then also that connection with the earth that we've lost, that we've just has been completely disintegrated and dissolved over this industrial age. And so talk about maybe the importance of this work. And, I really want to stress the importance of this work just through this interview, and I'm sure it will come through. But, why now? Why do men need this? Why is it the time for us to come back to these roots and reconnect with ourselves and with all of the earth and the feminine and nature and all of it?
Yeah. I love that question. It's questions like that I've been living into for years now. And at times I feel like I got a hold of the lion's tail, and at times I feel, completely wondering. I think something that is quite prevalent amongst humanity today, and certainly in the West, regardless of gender, is that we're looking outward for points of reference of which to navigate our lives. And so if you imagine walking through a city or a landscape or like a mountain range, we're walking, having these points of reference. That's 17th Street. Oh, that's Left Hand Creek. That's Haystack Mountain. And it's necessary for us to orient to the world. And in the absence of philosophies that really give us the skills and knowledge to learn about those landscapes on the interior, then oftentimes we're marooned to functioning completely on the exterior of our lives. And so part of, I love this. I may have to use it as my tagline, the reviving the wild within. It's on my website. It's something that came through, but I don't often talk about that much, is really discovering those interior landscapes, those points of reference that we can really travel our interior. And that's our inner nature. One of the beautiful things that happen going out into the wilderness for extended periods of time is the wilderness is always expressing what is. I'm watching a robin. It keeps flying here on this branch in front of my window. It's like a robin is nearly always going to behave as a robin. The cottonwood tree that it's resting on is pretty much always going to behave as a cottonwood. And us humans, we can lie, and we unconsciously often do. And so when we immerse ourselves in nature with the constant expression of what is, then our inner nature naturally is drawn forth, because it gets mirrored, and the layers that aren't us begin to fall away, and our interior landscape, those interior points of reference, become more punctuated. They're easier to see. Why is that important? Wow. Our integrity, honesty, our visions, our sense of wholeness, all reside in knowing that landscape. And I'm also under the influence of the idea that we live on a feminine planet. And so to discover our inner nature is also when we get down to the bone, then we are I think, following the original instructions of being a human being living on planet Earth, or Earth Mother or Mother Earth. Maybe there's a masculine planet out there. I don't know what it would be like, but I really believe this is a feminine planet. And so for men, it's so critical because even biologically, like, we're outward facing, right? And so it's even more important for us to get in tune with that interior. Yeah, and we've come to a point where, we're, again, regardless of gender, we're so out of balance, and so yeah, that's why I feel like it's really important at this time. That's on the human level, and going out in the wilderness. It is my experience that a cottonwood or a robin or a bull snake or a mule deer also like to be recognized, also like to be part of our conversation, also love to be acknowledged and praised. And so by us doing that, we awaken places. I think as a caretaker species, humans, that's part of our responsibility. And perhaps one of the most necessary instructions received in the process of initiation long ago was how to be in relationship with nature and be responsible and a caretaker to the places that we live. I have to keep pausing because I want to riff on this for a long time.
I'm honoring the pauses, and anything else that you want to add to that is very much welcomed, and really just continuing to soak in every word that you're saying, because it's really hitting home for me.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
I see nature as this, in the way you explain it so eloquently, and just even speaking to my own personal connection with nature, there's something that nature does that nothing else can do. And I often say that it's a truth serum. It brings truth to the surface without us even having to do anything but just exist within it. And it's the nature that brings up all of the lies that you spoke to, all of the things that maybe we haven't been honest with ourselves. It will bring it to the surface to be seen and to be transmuted, and also for that point of reconnection of a man, of a woman, of whatever gender that you relate to. It doesn't matter. You and nature existing as one, and that inner nature, that true nature that is always within us, to be fully awakened through these experiences. And really, at the end of the day, I told you when we first met in January, I'm like, I will be there, and I'm still have September mapped on my calendar. I'm like, I will be there for one of your experiences. But yeah, where I was going with that, I'm not sure. But yeah, this idea of truth serum and nature really spoke to me when you were talking.
Yeah. Well, there's a log around the fire. There's a space around the fire for you. Yeah. And speaking about men's work, I never got to see Robert Bly in person. But I've certainly listened to a lot of his audios that are out there and read his books. And I just remember this one piece, and I'm saying this just to balance out what we're talking about, nature. I remember him saying one time, like something like, "There's parts of nature that don't give a damn whether you have your truth or not. It's going to eat you alive when you go out there." And so there's that realness too.
Mm.
There's that realness that I think can be so startling, because we get to embrace the unpredictability, the sense of like, it doesn't matter how many fucking asanas I did this morning. That lightning storm's going to come and it's going to like, I'm going to be drenched and I'm going to be cold and it's going to be loud, or, whatever it may be. 80-mile-an-hour winds that are going to rip my clothes off of me. I mean, it's like there's that necessity that we are so insulated from in our days, that going out there is so just raw. Like, we were talking a little bit before we started, and I'm in between programs right now, and I'm building a little outdoor cob kitchen. I don't really know how to build, so it's like I'm learning on the job kind of training, and it's a blast, and it's so nourishing for me. And I'm out there at 8 o'clock this morning, 9 o'clock, and it's already like blistering hot. I mean, I'm just like pouring sweat out there working on this what we're calling the Cobb Cabana, and that's real. It's real to have sweat pouring from us, and we're just so insulated. And that's one of the biggest things about initiation, in my studies and experiences, is it cracks and dismantles the idea that the purpose of life is to be comfortable. Because if we're still operating under that premise that the purpose of life is to be comfortable, then we are going to do whatever means we have to fulfill that desire, which is the world we live in today, which is quite quickly eroding the life systems that support us. Yeah. So it's not that like, comfort isn't nice, or, any of that. I'm not saying that, but that's not the purpose of existence. And so being out there, it's like, it's real, it's a real encounter. The communication is direct. Oftentimes when I talk about teaching fire by friction, whether it's a hand drill or whether it's a bow drill, that because we ourselves are so intimately connected with the process of creating fire, that we are able to receive ancient wisdom and knowledge from making fire. But we interact with fire every day. I mean, most of our cars, electric or not, fire is in its, motivating us down the road. And yet there's so many degrees of separation between us and that combustion that we can't access that original wisdom. And so when we start working it and making fire directly, then all of a sudden there's a tremendous amount of information and communication that occurs. And so that's the realness when we get out into the wild. It's like all of a sudden we don't need Google. we don't need a plethora of books. I love Google and I love books, but there's a direct transmission of information that we need at that time to forward our lives. And there's certainly Google consciousness, where meaning people get this beautiful truth and they're ready to like get the next one, do the next search, and it's like no. That's something that's going to take years to bring into your life. Where you're no longer holding the teachings or teaching the teachings, you've become them. You've lived and died by them. So I don't know where we are. I just started riffing.
Well, this is why I like this platform and like this conversation, because there is the opportunity just to be authentic and real. And everything you just said and really just came through so profoundly is this idea that really we've lost touch with our own inner wisdom. And, through the comfort of everyday life, of living in the modern world and, living in these beautiful shelters and, perhaps even living a luxurious lifestyle, we've lost that connection with that rawness, that realness that nature brings. And so, and it's interesting because when you're talking about discomfort and comfort, a few things come up, because even in the luxurious lifestyle, there's a lot of discomfort. It's just that not everybody wants to look at that discomfort. And generally that just stems from the internal. And the discomfort or uncomfort that you're speaking to is specifically in regards to nature and, being out in the elements and interfacing with these elements in such an intimate way, and what that can do to shape a person and to mold a person into harmony, into oneness with life, and really that weaving takes care of itself through this process of initiation. So perhaps we want to speak to that a little bit about the initiation process and the importance of that for men, and why going through this process, and really what this can do for men around the world that do go through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me just sit with that for a moment. I think one of the most remarkable outcomes of doing a wilderness rites of passage for men is that they come out of the forest, and for a lot of them, they feel like they belong for the first time in their lives. Yeah, there's a real sense of like, whoa, I've been running away from this auspicious time called the now. I've been running away from that forever. I've been running away from this auspicious place called here. And in so doing that, and doing that in nature, all of a sudden there's this overwhelming sense of, oh my God, like this is my home. When a wren comes every morning and wakes you up with its song, there's an overwhelming sense of gratitude and sense of like, this place is amazing. It's beautiful. And I get to be part of it. I get to be here. That's one of the first steps. And, there's this, the next one is like, what comes as a sense of responsibility, like, wow, this is my home and I belong here. And everything is just so gracious and generous. Everything in nature is living and dying and just feeds a myriad of other things, other life forms. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in this spirit that moves through all things. And then all of a sudden the responsibility kicks in. Whoa, you're find an example. If you connect deeply with a river and then you go a month later and there was a truck that spilled toxic chemicals in it a mile up the road, then you get to feel that. You get to have some sense of responsibility. And my sense is it's a responsibility that for thousands of years men were given real clear instructions how to fulfill. And that's not very clear these days. It's not clear what the earth, what our culture, what our families, what our friends are really asking of us. And there's so many conversations pointing in the direction of what could be being asked of us. And my sense is that like it is a time for us to go out there and listen again to the earth. To really go back to those original instructions and really inform, and especially inform us as men, because, you know, I've said this before, that I really feel, and in my studies, that the masculine is informed by culture and the feminine is informed by nature. And culture is the mirroring of nature. True culture is a reflection or a mirroring of nature, of the place. It's not necessarily why initiations were so elaborate for men in times of old. They were just as elaborate for women, but they were informed by different elements. So oftentimes initiation, when a young woman was all of a sudden brought into the hut of grandmothers and elders, was when their moon started, when menstruation began. So it was informed by their interiority, by their biology, by the very nature. For boys and for men, it was informed when they started acting like knuckleheads, you know, when they started, you know, being highly competitive, highly possessive, started feeling attraction. It was all of a sudden like, oh, time to go. And they pulled all the boys out and took them away and taught them how to be in relationship with the earth and with the feminine and with themselves. And so in a time when we don't really have those maps of culture, and we live in as you said, an industrial society. That's still operating under the premise that an uninitiated premise, that the earth, that we're able to extract as much as we want, just like a child still suckling on the breast of her mother, of his mother. You know, and so initiation was the process of like cracking that and saying, no, you have to learn how to really be in relationship with the earth, with nature. And here's a framework, a cultural framework of which to do that. You know, in a lot of indigenous languages, the language wasn't purely or even exclusively for the purpose of communicating human to human. That wasn't its purpose. It was to bring us into connection with nature. Yeah, it was. And so, I mean, and that I would say language is a cultural component. And so, you know, we don't have a culture in as defined as I'm defining it, you know? And so what I really encourage men to do is we go out there and we listen again. Listen to nature. You know? And then just maybe our lives will become more of a reflection of that. You know, and we can begin to work from there. You know, and our children will be one step closer to a culture. You know, it's like I'm building this cob cabana, and it's like I'm finding clay just down the road and sand just down the road. Again, this is creating a structure that's a mirroring of the place. Yeah. And in hopes that it'll be beautiful, you know. I'm not a builder; they fall apart quite quickly. But that's the aim. You know? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I felt all of that and everything that you were saying there. One of the things that I feel that's something that, just to be extremely vulnerable and personal about my own experience into reconnecting with myself has been monitoring my relationship with the feminine and the feminine within myself, the feminine outside of myself, and the feminine being the earth. This has been a really intense process and a process of that's required a lot of radical honesty about how I've been showing up, the ways, and just starting from the interior, working out, from the interior, the ways in which I've have really lived in many ways, especially in my younger years, as this unbalanced masculine of forcing, of controlling, of just continuing to push, try, strive. And it's this model of masculinity, of competition and egocentric living that has caused this sort of dysfunctional relationship with my feminine, who deeply desires to be heard and to be listened to, desires flow. And interesting, I had an energy session with this incredible woman, and she was tapping into my energy, and she used an incredible analogy that I'll never forget. And this is a couple of years ago. And she said, Chris, it's time to just slow down a little bit. She's like, your masculine is, if I can, equate it to an instrument, it's like a playing heavy metal music, really, really strong metal music. And your feminine is playing this harp, but it's being drowned out by this guitar that is just playing at all times. And that something within that analogy that she spoke to me was like very profound, and something that I really never forgot since that point, and really start listening deeper to what the feminine wants inside of me. And, that then translates to the external of the way that I've related to my own wife, and how our relationship has evolved, and also have gone through deep challenges because of this relationship. And there's just so much there. And I think as men, the most important thing we can do is to really come back and honor that feminine within ourselves and externally. And I think what I really want, perhaps you can clear this up. And I think a lot of men, when they hear the word feminine, I'm all automatically the sensitive one, and the one that is just soft all the time. It's like, no, there's a balance here that to be had in order for this true warrior and these archetypes of the masculine to fully awaken. It has to have this sort of harmonization, this coherence with both sides. And perhaps you want to talk to that deeper. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share in regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to say that just to self-reference for a little while, like the warrior in me, like that's a strong archetype that comes up. And how it shows up for me is like to know what is worth fighting for. To know the ground that I do stand, and like I think just developing that quality or that strength, or if you're looking at like a king archetype, like that type of leadership, those are all really valuable. And it's like, for me, it's like I have to know what I'm fighting for. I have to know like why I'm leading, or where I'm leading if I'm in a position of leadership. I think that's something that's really important. I mean, in the men's work world, that it's like, what's his name? The mythic masculine, Ian McKenzie. on his podcast, I've heard him once say something like, "What happened to men's work? Like in the '90s, it was like they were reading poetry, and now we're doing like kettlebells and cold plunges." You know what I mean? It's like it's changed a lot, and there's obviously a lot more subtlety to both of those. But to illustrate my point, we've really dialed in some really beautiful qualities of men's work in our generation. And it's like, man, we got to fucking know what it is we're standing for.
Mm.
You know, we got to know where we're leading to, and to really hold a vision that's beyond ourselves, beyond our own idea that we'll get to see the results of it, what we're doing. So that touches when we bring up archetypes and the warrior, and because if we're still empowering and calling upon those energies and patterns that move through the world, without the understanding that part of becoming an adult is to have a purpose greater than ourselves, then either those energies are going to consume us, or they're going to descend into us, and we're going to start consuming everything else or others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's prevalent in men's work and in women's work.
Mm-hmm.
Calling upon these great energies and not really fully understanding the consequences. Yeah. So yeah, that's what touches me. And I'll pause there. Yeah.
The one thing that came up as well through this, and really the overall conversation that we're having here, and I think something important to highlight at this point of where we're at, the intersection that we've come to in this conversation, is that really what I think men are, without consciously or perhaps even unconsciously know it or not, is the idea of really truly having a purpose that is beyond oneself, and to really hold that within one's field, and the importance of that for the masculine and specifically, and to live with this purpose and whatever this might be. And I think so much of what we're lacking as a society is that sort of direction, that vision, that higher vision that comes obviously from the experiences that you spoke to earlier, and these sort of quests that men go on. And so, yeah, I feel deeply, and even, my own personal life and what I've traversed and have gone through, and really what speaks to me. And, in fact, this is a great time to bring this in. For the past 4 years, I've been so deeply immersed in this idea that was been fully just given to me through spirit, through my higher self, and through dreams and visions, as to what do I truly want from my life? What is the legacy that I'm here to leave? And, of course, we're all multifaceted, multidimensional individuals that have many tools and skill sets and talents and unique gifts that we're here to bring. But how am I bringing this? Am I bringing this just to make money? Okay, that's an important factor of being financially viable to provide for my family and all of that. But, that is always going to be the result, and that will be the result of me being in my highest frequency of service, of how can I give to this world and to create impact and ripples that will forever transform consciousness. And the one thing that just kept coming back to me is I have to step deeper into working with men and continuing to work on myself as a man. And it was ever since my son was born, he's 3 now, it was just like, this is probably the most important work that we can all do as men, is to really fully heal and come back to ourselves, and then come together and connect within groups, within nature, and all of these things. And so, yeah, you spoke about men's work and the different sort of variations of that from perhaps the 90s till now. But what encapsulates men's work for you? When you just hear the word men's work, I know this is many different definitions involved, but what is the full encapsulation of men's work to you?
Well, first, I just want to say, I want to honor you as a father.
Thank you, brother.
I do. And, I'm not sure if there's anything that kind of gets invested in a man's heart when more than becoming a father and going, oh my gosh, there's another life I'm responsible for. And that kind of drives into a real deep sense of purpose and responsibility that you spoke of. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. What is men's work? What do I think of? I mean, what comes is like a series of images and also some language, and it's something like men remembering their power in the world, power in themselves. Men remembering how to be in right relationship with power. Yeah. I think it's a huge part of men's work. Yeah. And power is such a tricky thing. I mean, it's like, what the hell does power mean?
The limitations of language.
Yeah. I mean, power for me is like the greater connections that we have with the whole of life, the more power we carry. So one of my teachers, and certainly one of the most formative teachers to my path, Tom Brown Jr., I would say that the man's one of the most powerful humans I have ever been around. And I have heard him lecture, I've heard him speak, heard him teach. I mean, we're talking 18 years, at least at the minimum once a year, spending a week with him. He is in such connection. I mean, like an intimate connection with the whole of life, that when he speaks, the whole of life is speaking through him. His awareness is speaking through him. It's the, owl fledglings. It's the bobcat. It's the dame's rocket flowers, all of that, and having an intricate sense of awareness with that, the sense of inhabiting, again, one's own place. That to me is power. Because with that level of awareness, then one has choice. And if one has choice, then they are empowered in their lives. So men's work is men remembering their power. Yeah, but it's like it all of a sudden gets a lot wider and more dimensional with the way that I like to discuss power. Yeah. And my golly, men's work is a whole lot of laughter too. I mean, it must be there. A whole lot of joy, a whole lot of laughter. I mean, men have to remember that we're lighthearted. we have to remember that, just as much as there's things worth fighting and standing for, that if joy is not sitting at that altar, then we're missing a great river of life force. And there's a lot of burdens men carry. And so to remember the joy, it's a big one for me. Yeah.
I really appreciate you mentioning that. I think that's a key thing that I think a lot of us as men forget. And I'm speaking from my own personal experiences, and something that the wellspring of joy that does sit within me, and to, share, even just, every time I reflect back on any sort of experiences, even just in this present moment of having this conversation with you, and just feeling what it feels like to be in that full ecstatic joy of just being alive and being on this planet, and then sharing that with others. And, it's in the greatest times, just thinking back with my son, every time that we're together, there's some sort of just laughter that just comes from the both of us. And it's just like, wow, this is really what life is about. And yes, the higher purpose, and of course the mission that we're all on, and to be the sacred guardians and protectors of this planet. And, it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. So I appreciate you mentioning that and bringing that into this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much that's of value that I feel that you bring just through your own presence and through your own heart. And, there's certain people out there and men out there that I truly have deep reverence for and respect for. And I really do. Even though, we've had a couple conversations, I can feel the power. And speaking to that power, I can feel the power of your work, and also, the embodiment of it. And it's not just, hey, let's go out and do this. It's more, I've lived this, I've walked this path. Let me show you and guide you the way, and walk you back home to yourself. And that's what I get from your work and from just speaking with you. And so I really do appreciate the authenticity that you bring to this conversation and all of life.
Thanks, brother. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I mean, it's just so good to get together and talk about these things that matter.
I feel that.
And that are important. And, I was just thinking, like a lot of, what I've shared today, and we've talked about, in the process of getting a book out there that should be out in maybe 6 to 8 months, which I'm really excited about. It's 10.
Do you have a title for it?
No, I don't. It's funny. I tell people, and that's one of the first questions I get is, "What's the title?" I don't know.
It will come to you when it's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weaving this all together a little bit more. Writing is one of those things. I mean, it's like having the conversation here is like free form. It's like it's like I've heard musicians talk about the difference between live shows and studio recording, and live shows are like rowing out into the ocean, and studio recordings are like assembling a boat in a bottle.
I love that.
Actually, I heard Jerry Garcia said that, and it's like the book is a little bit more like that, like really fine tuning. Whereas conversations like this, or when I go out into the wilderness and I'm guiding, we're rowing out into the great ocean of possibility, and it's really fun. Yeah, so it's a gift for me too. Yeah.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that. And as a writer myself, and somebody that enjoys the process of really taking an idea that sometimes can be very ethereal, and really forming that and bringing that down into structure, into form, such as perhaps, manifesting as a book or a speech or whatever it might be. There's something that's powerful about that process of refinement, because it's not only refining the message you want to share, but it's also refining yourself through that process. So there's a lot of deep work that's involved in creating that and bringing that to the world. So, I understand that wholeheartedly, although I'm not an author yet, will be at some point, but I do really respect that process deeply. It's a tremendous process of growth and transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's working me. It's working.
Awesome. Well, I'll be looking forward to checking it out when it's out. Yeah. So the last thing I just want to mention here is like my full intention at this point, as I mentioned in January when we spoke, was that I'm going to be coming out to one of your quests, and one of the things that I have marked on the calendar, at least right now, would be the Vermont quest in September. That's one's really calling me. But I just speak to some of the things that you're doing, some of the events that you're hosting, in case any other men that are listening to this have this sort of call to come and join you and to be a part of your work and your world.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, quests are a great way. It's certainly in the summertime. Spring, summer, fall is when I'm doing most of that work. And they're all over. I do them in Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Vermont. Vermont is typically every fall, and this will be maybe my ninth year going there. The dates for that one, they shifted a little bit. August 29th to September 6th, I believe. Yeah. And I'm trying to think what else. There's a lot of other things that I do that are not necessarily like on the website, that are public, that are more small groups that are formed. Sometimes there's one-on-one quests or small groups or a group of people that want to quest together. That's a big chunk of my work right now. And I also do a form of divination, cowrie shell divination, that comes from West Africa, Burkina Faso, specifically Malidoma Somé, who was involved in the 90s in the men's work. He brought this form of divination to the West, to the world, not just the West. And so that is something I do a lot. And it's essentially like a 60 to 90 minute spontaneous image of the soul and one's questions. I mean, people can come with questions about a dream that they had to big life decisions of moving somewhere, or marriage, or relationship, or money, or ancestors. A lot of people, men, are doing ancestral work. Like starting to learn about, my people came from Ireland or Scotland or France or Germany. In my case, I'm first generation on my mother's side in this country. She was born in Iran. And so, it's like there's a lot of guys doing ancestral pilgrimages. And so they'll come for divination and go, what rituals do I need to do over there? What ancestors are speaking really loudly? Or a lot of ancestral pieces, gift, purpose pieces, healing, all that comes up in the process of divination. And so that's in between all the quests, yeah. And what's really cool is I can do those over Zoom as well.
Amazing.
So, I mean, I have given divinations. I mean, just in the past couple of weeks, people from New York, people from Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, California, all over the world.
That's incredible. Yeah. And where can people find out about that?
Yeah, darrensilver.earth is my website. DarrenSilver, Darren Silver, .earth. That's a good way to get in touch with what I'm up to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I would recommend anybody that enjoyed this conversation and enjoyed, Darren himself and this just beautiful flow of yeah, just I really, again, my heart goes out to you because I feel just so much passion when it comes to this conversation. Even for me, it lights me up in so many ways. So if you enjoyed this, go check out his work. And yeah, it's something that really crossed my mind was because I'm going to be hosting. I have an event or a retreat coming up in October in the Big Island, end of October, a men's retreat, an off-grid retreat center in the Big Island, which I'm really looking forward to. And my intention going into 23 is going to be hosting many more different immersions, things like that. And one thing that crossed my mind is, hey, let's do something together. Let me gather a group of men and let's do something together, because I truly want to support you and your work and just come together in that space. I think would be epic. So let's make that happen. I'm just putting that intention out there right now.
Yeah. Likewise, brother. It'd be so fun. It'd be so
Cool.
fun. And gosh, blessings on, the Big Island. Oh my gosh. I lived on the Big Island 15 years ago, something like that for 3-4 months, 5 months, something like that. I was just a young knucklehead at the time.
Big energy there.
Younger knucklehead. Yeah. I miss it over there. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for getting me on here. It's a real honor. Real honor to be on this, and thank you for forwarding my voice and all the voices out there of people doing really good work, and you forwarding your voice and your work out in the world. It's just so important, at nearly 20 years ago now, was the first class I took with Tom Brown, and he really inspired this question of what's your vision, and the subsequent questions and teachings he gave around that are coming to my mind right now was, he said, if you had 24 hours to live, would you be doing what you're doing right now? And if you are, then you're living your vision. And so I give thanks to him and all the teachers. There's so many out there. Tom Brown, Uncle Tom, Melissa Michaels, Malidoma Somé, Martine Prechtel, these are folks that I've spent time with and give great thanks to. So there's also something, I'm just going to drop this seed. Yeah.
Do it.
There's embodiment has been a big part of my path, really the last 10 years. And it was this winter was the first time that I actually, we're talking 10 years of practice, before offering it. And I offered it this winter for the first time. Beautiful process, an embodiment practice, an elemental movement practice that is based upon the philosophy of the earth. And I got to do it out in Vermont with about 30 people. And I'm excited to do more of that. There's nothing out there yet publicly, but yeah, I'm enjoying that as well. So with that, yeah.
I look forward to all of it, man. Like, it's just like a constant evolution. So I'm sure there's just going to be so many more incredible offerings and spaces that will be available. So thank you, brother, so much for this conversation. And yeah, for everybody that wants to go check them out, darrensilver.earth. And we'll flow from there.
All right,
Talk to you soon, brother.
See ya.
See ya.